What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Tipsy Trope. I am your host, B-Man, and today we're serving up bubbly and talking about one Addie Larue. Yes, a book that I enjoyed the concept of, and I enjoyed the read for the most part, but I also feel like there were some missed opportunities. Let's drink about it. Let's go on a little road trip. I'm heading over to Total Wine. This is my perfect warehouse-sized liquor, wine, and beer place. It's great. They're a chain, so you might have one in your area. If you do, you should definitely check it out. They have a whole bunch of stuff that you can't find anywhere else, and the prices are awesome. Let's find some nice champagnes here at Total Wine. Oh wait, I think that's Guitar Center. Total Wine over here. Let's go see what champagnes and sparkling wines we can find. So these Corbels are super cheap. I wouldn't drink them on their own, but they're great for mimosas. Right, this is a good one right here. Maille, this is a Grand Cru. Grand Cru is top of the line, best grapes. So I think we're gonna pick this one up. What the? So I'm back from the store with an assortment of champagne and sparkling wines, and we'll talk about the difference in just a minute here. But why are we talking about champagne anyways? Well, the book, The Invisible Life of Addie Larue, takes place largely in France, and there's a specific scene in which Addie tries champagne for the very first time and loves it. So I thought, what a perfect pairing and a great opportunity for us to talk about sparkling wine on the channel. But first, let's talk about Addie a little bit. The Invisible Life of Addie Larue. Just kidding, I'm back. So, what is this book about? Well, it is largely based on the trope of don't make a deal with the devil, which is closely related to careful what you wish for. If you don't want to know anything about the setup of this book and what it means that Addie is invisible, then maybe skip this video or go here. I'm just going to go into basically the first 50 or 60 pages of the book, which isn't that much, because it talks about what happens to Addie initially, which is the concept of what this book is based on. So, Addie Larue is stuck in a predicament. She's in a tight situation and she doesn't know how to get out of it. She looks for some ways out but does not find any and is desperate. And in her desperation, she goes out and makes a deal with someone who she should not have, a devil of sorts. And the deal that she makes is not what she expected. The wording of the deal, like a legal contract, gets her. This is similar to the wish spell in D&D if you've ever played. A wish spell is a very high level, powerful spell that can grant you many things, but you have to be careful how you word it, because the dungeon master or storyteller, if you're not familiar with D&D, is going to take an opportunity to mess with you if you don't. So if you say, I wish for 1,000,000 gold pieces, the DM will say, sure, granted. And then... So when my friends and I used to play, we used to write down the exact verbiage in a contract form on a sheet of paper, paragraphs explaining exactly what we want. I want 1,000,000 gold pieces, 50 of which are in this pocket, 50 of which are in this pouch and my belt, and the rest of it distributed across the 7 great kingdoms at banks that will recognize me and me only and will give me the money upon asking. And even then the DM would mess with you. But you didn't say when you wanted it. Arrgh! So, Addie makes a deal with the devil, a deal that renders her basically forgettable, let's say. So she has to go through her whole life and not be remembered. She's invisible, so to speak, which is a cool concept, and there's a lot that could have been done there by V.E. Schwab in this story. And I feel like she didn't take advantage of it. Well, this story is mainly about Addie's relationships. It could very well be called the invisible relationships that Addie had through her life. And I feel like there was some lost opportunity here. We could have had Addie with her gift, so to speak, of being invisible, do a lot of cool things. She could have altered history dramatically behind the scenes as like an unseen person who affects the events of the future, but no one really recognizes it, but we do as the reader. That would have been really cool. But Schwab focuses on the relationships. It could be that I'm just not the target demographic for this sort of book. This is bordering on romance for me, but it has the trope that I referred to earlier, which is a fantastical element added to it. So, I don't know. Could have been more. But that's not to say that I didn't enjoy the read. I liked V.E. Schwab's writing style in this for this type of book. We're talking about a lot of relationship stuff, a lot of emotions, and I think her flowery writing with metaphors galore is perfect to express emotion, and I think she does that really well here. I have not read her Dark Magic series, but I hear it's good. But if this sort of flowery writing is in a more serious fantasy book, I think it would put me off a little bit. You have to be really, really good at writing to make kind of a flowery, poetic, elegant type of writing feel appropriate for a fantasy novel. This guy did it perfectly. The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss, another author who has very, very amazing, elegant writing and poetic at times. And I feel like he did a great job in this book, bringing it to life and bringing the emotions out of the characters. And this is by no means a romance novel. This is fantasy through and through. And we'll discuss this book in a future video, so subscribe if you want to see that. The other thing that I really, really liked about this book was that it is written in two different timelines, essentially. We have Addie in modern day New York, or as modern as 2014 was, but that's kind of her present day. And then we go back to Villon, France in the 1700s. And then we go back again to New York and discuss Addie a little bit more. Then we go back again to France, and then back again to New York, and back again to France to kind of get a little bit more development, and then back again. And it goes back and forth like that. I really like that dual time stream aspect that she's brought here, flipping back and forth between chapters and introducing us to present day Addie versus Addie in the past, and how some of the things that we see that happens to her in the past affect her present day, and then we go back and get a little bit more and then come back to present. That's really cool, that jumping back and forth. I really like that. So good job on that, Victoria Schwab. There are also a few inconsistencies about Addie's condition that I found a little bit jarring, and it kind of takes you away from the believability of the story a little bit. I don't know, maybe it is fully explained and I missed it, but if you have read this, let me know down below. I'm specifically talking about growing that tree over the grave. I think you'll know what I'm talking about. Also, as one of my coworkers pointed out, did the people hanging out with Addie Larue never leave to go to the bathroom? Like, how do they do a painting of her? It takes days to do a painting. I don't know. And I know this hasn't been a ringing endorsement of the book, but it is a solid read. And if you're into relationships and romance with a side of fantasy, then I think you'll like this. Champagne. Not all sparkling wine is champagne, but all champagne is sparkling wine. Here in California, like this Domaine Chandon here, we refer to all of our sparkling wines as just that, sparkling wine. In France, they call it champagne if it comes from the Champagne region only, like this one. This is a Malais, and it is a Grand Cru, and we'll talk about what that means in just a minute. And this is also from France, but it's not called champagne because it's not from that region. It just says French sparkling wine. If it's from Spain, they can call it cava. There's Prosecco in Italy, lots of different names, but essentially we're talking about the same thing, wine with bubbles in it. So we have three different colorations here. The normal way that you're used to seeing champagne, which is that white wine color, and then we have the rosé color, And then here you have the red, which is a little bit more rare. So let's open up this guy. The categorization of sparkling wine is a little bit weird and confusing because it goes against normal wines. When you think of a dry wine, you think of a wine that is not sweet at all. In fact, when you're talking about wines, you generally say they're either sweet or dry. But here in sparkling wine land, dry does not necessarily mean it is not sweet. In fact, brut means that it's not sweet. Dry and extra dry mean that there's a little bit of sweetness in it. And then it goes down to demi-sec and doux, D-O-U-X, which is what this is, which means it's the sweetest. Let's open this up. Got to get that cage off, which is kind of a secondary. Woo! That one popped real quick. I wasn't even ready for it. I guess it was begging to come out. All right, red sparkling wine from France. Look at all them bubbles. The bubbles just add kind of an element of celebration to any event, don't they? There's no apparent sweetness on the nose. Let's give it a try. Even though it's the sweetest category or classification that a champagne or sparkling wine can have, this isn't actually all that sweet. It's like having a very jammy Zinfandel, like a Rombauer Zinfandel if you've ever had one of those. Quite delicious. Now I'm not gonna open up these other twos because it's the middle of the day and I don't really have anyone to drink with, and if I open them, they have to be drunk. Champagne is not something that you can save up, unfortunately. The bubbles will dissipate and then it'll be no fun. So we've talked about the different categorizations of the wines and we've talked about the different levels of sweetness, intensity, but what does it mean if a champagne says Grand Cru on it or Premier Cru on it? Well, to put it very simply, Grand Cru is the top dog, the highest tier. Like this Malay here, this is the Grand Cru. It's the best grapes, and they've taken that and made a champagne out of it. And the more expensive doesn't mean the better. This is about a $40 bottle, and it's a Grand Cru, and it's really, really tasty. Dom Perignon, for example, is not a Grand Cru, but the price is astronomical. It's like $100, $200 plus per bottle. You're paying for the label and the name Dom Perignon, which has a story behind it that I think is interesting. He was a monk who worked in an abbey in France, and part of his duties was winemaking, and he was said to discover making sparkling wine, though this is debated, but upon discovering it, he calls his fellow monks over and says, "Brothers, I am tasting the stars." And of course, the stars referring to the bubbles that are in champagne. Thanks for stopping by the Tipsy Trope. Catch me on the various social medias, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.